Hi there, Libra Sun and Rising. Welcome to your December 2023 Astro Update. This is Raina, and I want to talk to you about all of these transits, but I want to let you know that I'm recording this on the 7th of November, and I do this because it seems to be the time when I gain the most traction, as opposed to doing it later in the month and it might get buried and then hardly any people will see it all together. So I would actually prefer to do it towards the end of the month, but it is what it is. And I want to tell you about that. I wanted to tell you about that because as I'm recording this, we have a few weeks left in November, and Pluto has gone direct since October in Capricorn and will stay in Capricorn actually even beyond December. And the day that it goes back into Aquarius is going to be on the same day that the sun goes into Aquarius. So that really does give that symbolic idea of the Aquarian age. And for you in particular, Pluto in Capricorn is your fourth house of home and family. This is one of the angular houses and therefore a very big deal. So there will be another one of these Pluto retrogrades that goes back into a late degree of Capricorn in 2024 and then totally Aquarius for 20 years. And that's going to be your fifth house. And that should be very interesting because this is an area of creativity, but also of love. And that's kind of your specialty, isn't it? So that's something that you'll probably be very interested in. You can check out, I do believe I have a video up on Pluto in Aquarius if you're interested. It should be on my channel for your sign or your ascendant, for your sun sign or your ascendant. But anyway, on the first of the month, Mercury goes into Capricorn. So, yeah, the reason I was even bringing up this thing with Pluto is that you're going to start to have these transits in Capricorn as well. And these will just, join Pluto in that fourth house. And that could indicate like some heightened activity when it comes to your family of origin. I believe the mother, some people say the father. I say family of origin to keep it more neutral in that regard, but also this is the house of your current living situation. So, whatever kind of dwelling you're living in, maybe you're thinking of moving or renovating your current space, that could be featured as well. So Mercury in this house could certainly be anything with sales of a home and contracts. And this is where there's going to be a retrograde. So you want to be very aware of that as well. As a matter of fact, I'll just bring that up, that on the 13th of the month, Mercury goes retrograde at 8 degrees of Capricorn. So it goes into Capricorn on the 1st, and then almost 2 weeks later goes retrograde, the day after the new moon in Sagittarius. And by the way, Sagittarius is your third house, and that can be like business and sales. So there may be some connection there. I'm sure just by virtue of statistics, there may be a few Libra people listening to this who may be real estate agents. So this might be something that is related to that. I will say for anybody who is selling property or doing anything that has the connection with home matters, be careful about contracts. Sometimes you have to sign during a Mercury retrograde because otherwise the deal will slip through your hands, and that would be foolish. because you're afraid of something bad happening for you to not sign a contract for a home that you want. But be very careful about what it is on the contract. Um, home inspections, that's one of those things where people, they're just so eager to sign and buy a home that they're not like paying attention to what's actually going into that home, or what, are there any kind of like hidden defects in that home. So being very like, kind of going over everything with a fine-tooth comb. There may be some kind of communication breakdown or, misunderstanding between you and your mother. So be mindful of those kinds of things. Going back to more towards the beginning of the month, on the 4th, your ruler, Venus, goes into Scorpio, which happens to be your second house of earned income. And it is the house that Venus rules. So this is very good for money. When Venus is in its own house, it can be great for attracting money to you. And it is the holiday season, so who knows how that will come about. It might be, when I say attracting, it might be that you're actually working a little holiday job. It's not just that you're sitting there and waiting for the money to fall in your lap, but you're actually working for it. But it can just be that this is these few weeks when Venus is in Scorpio can be particularly good for money and you, as well as your self-esteem, which can be the second house as well. On the 6th, Neptune turns direct at 24 degrees, almost 25 degrees of Pisces. And this for you is your 6th house of work, which I call service to others. And it's also the house of health. So, the way that I characterize the Neptune retrograde and direct, we can call Neptune retrograde disillusionment, or we can say a reality check. A reality check is not a bad thing. Disillusionment is kind of the negative version of that. When you really have your hopes up about something and the practical elements of it, the impractical elements is probably more like it, of that thing makes you realize that it's not going to necessarily unfold the way you think it is. And then, some people get very discouraged and they're like, oh, this is never going to happen, when it never was about that. It was really that you have to rework something in order to make it more viable. Luckily for all of us who may have Neptune and Saturn in the same house, because Saturn went into Pisces. Now Saturn is direct as well. And that can help to balance out that unrealistic tendency of Neptune. So anyway, when Neptune is in the 6th house, this can influence the type of work that you feel drawn to do. Particularly, in my opinion, this would be artistic work as well as spiritual types of work. Now, artistic things are, right up your alley, Libra. And one thing, it doesn't just have to be a painter or somebody like that. It could be a fashion designer. I could totally see that for a Libra person, or a makeup artist. But it could be, the traditional things that we think of. And maybe something that occurred in the last few months made you question your dream. Because let's face it, let's say it is fine arts. It isn't something that is easy to just kind of jump into, because our society doesn't like say, hey, you too can become an oil painter or whatever, or you can become a dancer. I'm not talking about a stripper, by the way. I'm talking about, you can become an actress or a writer. Our society wants us to plug into these other types of professions that are more linear. Or you can be a Reiki master. So Neptune going direct allows you to have the ability to dream, maybe dream big. And with Saturn here, you can also manifest this by crystallizing. Your vision becomes crystallized, which means that it becomes more realistic because you're, looking at it from the practical standpoint of like, what things do I need to do to make it happen? On the 12th, 12/12 portal, no less, we have a new moon at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. This forms a friendly angle to you called a sextile. I've touched upon this. I'll just say a few other things. This can be a new teaching position. Some of you Libra individuals are in this line of work, and this can be the kind of job offer that you've been looking for. Maybe you're taking a new course for training purposes. And it can have some kind of, maybe it is some kind of spiritual type of course, becoming a Reiki master. Even a massage therapist is something that is like a healing type of profession, but is not connected to drugs per se. And the reason I'm saying not connected to drugs is because with Neptune in the fourth house, I think of people who are, it's like energy work or something, and massage therapy, even though it's actual physical manipulation of the body, because it is touch and it is drugless. Neptune is actually connected to drugs, but there's that spiritual component to it, and I think that natural things to me are connected to spiritual. That's just my natural way, pardon the pun, of connection between this sort of thing. But, Reiki master, energy healer. So, what else? Well, I mean, you may be launching a website. That's a possibility. It's funny because this is definitely when Mercury is in its shadow, because the very next day is when Mercury goes retrograde. And I was thinking, well, would that be a good time to launch a website the day before Mercury goes retrograde? And, some astrologers, maybe the vast majority, would say no. But there was this astrologer that I follow, and I noticed that they created a new website and launched it during a Mercury retrograde. So I really feel like there are some people out there who have the inside skinny on some of these, inner dealings with Mercury retrograde and launching projects. And they're telling the public, don't ever do it, but then they're doing it. Interesting. Yeah, so Mercury goes retrograde the next day in Capricorn. I've covered this. This is in that fourth house of home and family. On the 21st, we have the winter solstice when the sun goes into Capricorn. I say winter, obviously down under, it's summer, and we're dealing with two opposite kind of symbolic, well, it's not really just symbolic, it's actual literal things happening. The sun is strengthening in the northern hemisphere where I live, and I don't like to say it's weakening, but it is diminishing, and the days are becoming gradually shorter in the southern hemisphere. So there's kind of like, you could call it this decline, but then there's this gradual building up. So the darkest point in the northern hemisphere comes at that winter solstice. But then from what I've been reading, it doesn't just immediately go and start gaining. There's like a 3-day period. And they were saying that's why Christmas Day was when it was, is because that's when it started to gain just by a minute the sun. And it's these changes of the season are power periods because the sun goes into a cardinal sign, and cardinal signs indicate that change is afoot. So this is your fourth house of home and family. And by the way, because you had Pluto retrograding, this could be an internal change. The fourth house can be your childhood. And so you may be freeing yourself from some of those, like the symbolism of the light, if, you're the light coming, kind of pouring into this area and strengthening, if you're in the northern hemisphere, strengthening your understanding of what happened when you were younger. So that it's kind of like you go, kind of hitting bottom and then coming back up again. On the 26th, we have a full moon at almost 5 degrees of Cancer. Here's another cardinal sign, that's how it is. The full moon is when there's an opposition between the sun and moon. So this is that other, angular house on the opposite end, the 10th house. And that's the area of your place in the world. This can be a something is increasing in prominence, and maybe it's a culmination of something. The person who gets the raise, I was going to say raise because Venus is in the second house. It could be something like a raise. I would say, come to think of it, because it's Christmas, Venus in the second house could be like a Christmas bonus, a holiday bonus. But with the full moon in the 10th house, there could be greater prominence, recognition, respect for accomplishments. Or even like the person who is retiring and kind of like going out in a blaze of glory. Going out on top, I should say. If you're also selling your home, it could be for a job, a change in your life circumstances. Maybe you're moving to a foreign country. Or if you're like retiring and you're downsizing, that's always a possibility too. Remember that your sun or your ascendant, also the south node is in Libra. So you might be going through some things right now that feel very faded and feel like endings in your life, and feel like now is the right time to end such and such thing. And one of them might be connected to a career. It doesn't mean that in all cases it would be retirement, but just change of career. So again, with Neptune in the 6th house, you might say, okay, I put in 20 years teaching, and now I want to be a Reiki master. I want to be an artist. And I have the resources, and I want to just kind of do what is my passion. I've kind of put in that time, and now I want to do it. I think that's a universal theme right now as we go through this transition, starting with 3 years ago when we had the shutdown and people were kind of like prevented in a lot of cases from doing what they normally do. And that got them to thinking about their life beyond that 9-to-5 hamster wheel, because they didn't have that opportunity. And that led to a spiritual awakening for some people, because, I'm not one of those people that says, oh yeah, it's bad to work 9 to 5. Not at all. Some people really thrive with that kind of, framework. But the danger always can be that it distracts people, and that they're so busy just kind of doing the day to day that they don't realize that their life has a that they came here to do certain things. So, if a person is conscious and they're working a 9 to 5 job, it's awesome. And that's the interesting thing about you having Neptune in that sixth house, is that it gets you thinking on a more abstract level. Some of you I'm talking about before Saturn entered the picture in March, that some of you, because Neptune has been here for years, and you may have just let go of this regimented type of way of ordering your day, which that's the sixth house as well, your daily schedule, routine. And Neptune can, just completely make the person do what they do randomly. Well, I shouldn't say randomly, but there's no schedule. There's no kind of, discipline to it. It's just kind of maybe being very intuitive. I have this in my natal chart, so I know of what I speak, living this way. Um, and because I do, I think you're lucky that you have Saturn entering, that Saturn has entered the sixth house. Okay, let's see here. On the 23rd, oh, see, I have this flipped over. I should have said this first. It doesn't really matter. But going back to the 23rd, Mercury goes back into Sagittarius. So it starts in the 4th and goes back into the 3rd. And that can mean that you are rethinking something that is third house related. So another thing that the third house can be is your siblings, also your aunts, uncles, cousins. So there might be some kind of misunderstanding that really sweeps through different people in your family. And sometimes misunderstandings are not what they seem. A person may jump to conclusions because they really want to control the narrative. So if you do find that something along these lines has arisen and you remember what I said, you can speak your piece, but you can also let it go. Even though, because a lot of times Libra people, they get quite distressed over, times when there's some kind of conflict, but sometimes we have to be disciplined enough and trust in ourselves to know that if we have, tried to make somebody else understand and they refuse to do so, then it just serves them to, quote unquote, not get what we're saying. And we don't have to keep proving ourselves or explaining ourselves. So there might be something along those lines where somebody is really trying to get you to do something. Maybe you said no to something and people are like, what? Excuse you? Because they're not used to you saying no to them. And then they act like you're doing something against them. But yeah, there can be something with a contract for sure that might have to do with property. On the 30th, Jupiter turns direct at 5 degrees of Taurus, and this is in your 8th house. Jupiter will be in your 8th house in the sign of Taurus until late May. Actually, I was trying to think okay, what's happening in that 9th house? Because that's the house of long distance travel, and that's the house ruled by your fellow air sign Gemini. And so there's going to be that Jupiter transit happening on, I think it's like around the 25th of May of 2024. And when that happens, that's going to really open up opportunities to travel to foreign countries, because that's what I was looking for when I was talking about that earlier. But now we're talking about the eighth house. And oh, yeah, I was talking about contracts just now. This could be something where you benefit from an inheritance. And by the way, an inheritance doesn't necessarily just mean money, it could be a property. So maybe there is something with contracts and property and eighth house matters. You also benefit from studying anything or going into, maybe going into that field of shamanism, transformation, psychology. That's eighth house. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that this resonated, Libra. If you would like to have a personal reading, I have a package deal called Deep Dive, which is an hour of natal chart analysis and an hour of transits for a special price compared to buying those readings separately. And, when it comes to chart readings, both of those readings are things that people tend to want. They want the analysis, but they also want transits. And so I believe I'm currently charging $85, 85 cents US dollars for at least 2 hours of a reading. You can't beat that with a stick. And I do have standalone readings as well, and you can find out more information at the link below. I'm at RainaMoonAstrology.com. Thanks for listening. Bye.